It is time. Woo! Are you ready to have one? I don't know. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Well, not even good morning, almost. Good pre-afternoon, I guess. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to be having an awesome presentation with Ben. He's going to be talking about migration, subject near and dear to everybody's heart. And yay, Ben.
Oh, thank you. I've got a mic already.
Oh, yes.
That's right.
If you want to get a cool T-shirt like Ben's, stop by the Inclusion and Diversity booth. We have them available for sale, and they're awesome. And the proceeds all go to charities around here in Tennessee. So, yay.
I've got a mic already. Yeah, sorry. And don't worry, you won't be buying this one. This one's a little bit worn, so it's fine. Okay, so welcome to my talk, Cloud with a Chance of Jamf. If you don't know me, my name's Ben Toms. I joined Jamf by the dataJAR acquisition, so I came in, it's my second year as a Jamf now at JNUC. My role now is Principal Software Engineer at Jamf. And a Friday, you might also know me as MacMill, from the Mac Admin Slack, on my blog, or whatever anyway. Or be like Troy McClure. You might remember me for such talks as, so that type of thing. So what we're going to go through today, the sections are, we're going to talk about history, my history of hosting Jamf itself, migration options that are open to you, a recap, and we're going to look at some next steps as well. We've got a QR code I'm going to show at the end as well. That links to a GitHub repo. That has all the links within this talk as well. So you can just grab that and you should be good to go. So let's look at history, right? So I've been around Jamf for a very long time, about 15 years now. So that's it. In the beginning, when I first started hosting Jamf itself, it was green at the top. We were using PowerPC devices. It was a bit earlier than this slide deck, but I couldn't find an earlier one. iOS 4 was just about coming out, I think, within like 2010, and that was the first time this newfangled thing called MDM came around. Yeah, it wasn't going to last, was it? A few years later, these Intel processors were all the rage. It was still called Casper Suite, as it was then, and it was the Jamf software server, not Jamf Pro, but it changed to blue. I can't remember if that's version 8 or version 9. Does anyone remember when it went blue? 9. Thank you. And then we go a few years down the line again, around 2016. I joined a company called dataJAR. We had a talk titled dataJAR at Moby, Story of Jamf with James Ridsdale, the founder of dataJAR. And we were presenting on how we were hosting Jamf Pro for customers at the time. When I joined dataJAR at the beginning, we were hosting what's called a multi-context setup. So you end up with shared resources for your Jamf Pro instances, so shared MySQL, Java, Tomcat, and then they've got their own little instances that they can access. When it comes down to this, when you look at the URL, which is the important part of this task, all those shared instances accessing that kind of uses that same URL, and then you have that additional bit at the end, which is what points you to that other instance. So this is what's called a multi-context instance within Jamf Pro. It's quite a legacy thing now as such, but I just wanted to say this is one of the things that we were dealing with. A few years later, well, a year later, between the Christmas and New Year's break of 2017, and we migrated everybody to Jamf Pro 10 and onto a Kubernetes environment. So with this, we had a deployment. It was all separate, so separate Tomcat, separate Java, the Jamf Pro instance on a web pod, and a separate pod for the MySQL. With this, we could give people a vanity URL, as we called it. So it's the company name dot, the rest of the DNS entry. And around this time, we had maybe 35, 40 Jamf instances when we started making these moves. Fast forward to JNUC 2022, post-COVID world, and a few weeks after this event, we actually migrated our internal instance into Jamf Cloud to start this process, to start the testing and go through it all. A few months later, February 2023, we started the process to move our customers over, and we had around 200 instances that we moved from February 2023 through to April 2024. And that's kind of that process there is kind of what I'm going to be talking about through this. And the process happened post our acquisition and joining the Jamf family as well. But it was a cool thing to obviously be involved in the middle. So why? Not why did Jamf buy dataJAR? I just want to make it clear. Why did we go this route? Why do we choose to migrate our instance to Jamf Cloud? Two main reasons why. The first one being cost. Now, I can't talk about the actual dollars and cents cost of this. You would have to speak to your account manager, et cetera, about that. But cost around the time. Jamf Pro has got quite aggressive now with its update cycle. It's around 6 to 8 weeks for a new version, and now getting more and more aggressive with keeping the versions of things like MySQL, Java, Tomcat, all those things up to date as well. So it's like the invisible cost because someone's had to spend time managing and maintaining that environment. Additionally, focus. The main thing that we were doing at dataJAR was, other than managing instances for people, being their MSP, being their Apple team as such, we're also building integrations that worked with Jamf Pro. And it's difficult to focus on them when you're too busy hosting Jamf Pro or doing those type of things. We decided as a business, just before we got, the year before we got acquired, that we were going to move to more of a SaaS model. So rather than us being the SaaS company ourselves, we were going to start consuming more SaaS. So that was obviously like a strategic decision as well. So we didn't have to invest in a huge infrastructure team, and we could start focusing on the other areas that we enjoy. So that was to give you some kind of history around my history with hosting Jamf Software Server, now Jamf Pro, and all that stuff as well. Just give you some context of how I feel like I can present this to you. And next we're going to look at the options that are available to you. So there are 3 main options that Jamf name internally, and that's what we're going to use these on here. So you've got custom DNS, the standard and fresh start. Not the most exciting of names, but we're just going to go through these, and we're going to go through and talk about the different options that are available, pros and cons, et cetera, and all that as well. So who do these apply to? Well, custom DNS and standard are applied to your existing Jamf Pro customers. Fresh Start is a brand new Jamf Pro instance. So that can apply to people newly coming to Jamf, or even if you're migrating from other MDMs, such as Jamf School, Workspace ONE, Intune, or even if you want to consolidate your Jamf Pro instances into one, and you want to migrate all your devices into a single Jamf Pro instance. But before we go further, how do you decide what you're doing? This is the old haiku, right? It's not DNS, there's no way it's DNS, it was DNS. Because this can really drive your options or limit your options depending on what's happening on there. So again, the URL that we looked at earlier, if we break that down, you can see the beginning bits of protocol, and subdomain, second level domain, top level domain. That bit at the end, green bit, is the really important part of this. So if your server is myjamfserver.local, you can't use custom DNS. You're going to have to either use standard or fresh start because that's not a publicly available top-level domain. Now, there are around 1,500 top-level domains that are publicly accessible. There's a Wikipedia guide with them there. Some have got different limitations, some of them are country limited, etc. But you can go in here and see different information about the different TLDs, so .com, .org, etc. And see what's available. So it's good to double check that on there as well. But also, obviously, if your Jamf Pro instance is already publicly accessible, then you're going to be good. But again, your DNS can really limit your options here. If it's myserver.local, you won't be able to do the custom DNS route. Again, when you look at your server, if you're hosting it on maybe Tomcat with the usual SSL port for Tomcat 8443, that's not going to be an issue. That shouldn't be an issue, I'd say. But that would need to be included when you get migrated to Jamf Cloud because the actual server URL in your MDM profile tags on that port number at the end. But it is feasible and it is okay to do, so that shouldn't be a showstopper for you. So what kind of happens with this process? So you've got your URL there. You basically put a CNAME in, which is a DNS record, and it will then point it to Jamf Cloud instance. But your devices still communicate on their existing URL. So this is where we talk about custom DNS. So you're using your DNS entry to point to your Jamf Cloud entry. Your devices are happy, not much needs to change. There's a second DNS entry needed so that a certificate can be issued for that domain as well, so the DNS entry as well. But with those two things done, you're on the road, basically. I mention these as well because us as the Jamf admin, these are often things that we don't have access to. There'll be other teams. So if this is a journey you're going on, it's worth noting these and having those discussions with your teams. And there's a big theme about that type of thing throughout this talk. Now, if we look at a multi-context URL, it's quite similar: protocol, subdomain, second level domain, top level domain, path. So you still need to have a top level domain that's publicly usable, so not .local, and it's the path bit. So this makes things a little bit more complicated because the CNAME link only applies to that first part of the URL, not the /macmil bit, not the path bit at the end. So your devices are actually need that full URL, and you can't do this with a straight CNAME. You can't do this with standard DNS. But one of the CloudOps teams was very helpful, the CloudOps members, and mentioned the fact that within the MDM spec, Apple will allow for 300 redirects. And so what you can do, you can use the 307 redirect, is what they told us. And what does that mean? So it's a temporary redirect. I used these last year as well, HTTP cats, HTTP dogs, a nice little thing to try and visualize what these HTTP codes mean. The temporary redirect, it's quite special in a way. Here's the stuff from the Mozilla articles on it. It's a redirect works because it basically passes over the whole request. Get, post, put, whatever, and the body are pushed through. As is, so the device, so the journey carries on with that. But it's not something that you can use with a DNS record as such. It's not the same as just putting a CNAME record in. What you need is actually a server in the middle. So you're going to have some web server that your clients will basically connect to on the original URL as such, and then it gets redirected through to the Jamf Cloud URL from that 307 redirect. So that needs a physical host, not just DNS. So the major benefit when you look at custom DNS is the fact that you don't need to re-enroll your devices. You'll just move it from your hosting to Jamf Cloud. There'll be some downtime, obviously whilst one's off and one's on, etc. But it's the easiest way to go forward. If it's a standard migration, that gives you a new URL. So it's a standard, a different Jamf Cloud, the different URL, so it'll be mycompany.jamfcloud.com. So you'll need to re-enroll your devices. Now, if you're working in EDU and you do huge refreshes of your devices over the school holidays, that might be a worthwhile solution for you because you can port your config over, port your database over, and then wipe and re-enroll your devices in one hit and you'll be good to go. But it's often the more problematic one out of the three. I know it says standard, but it's probably not the one that's generally used. And then, obviously, with Fresh Start, it's a brand new instance, so you need to actually enroll your devices into that as well. There's a couple more things that make custom DNS as standard different to the Fresh Start as well. First of all, it's your database. So you're going to be uploading a backup of your database to somewhere that Jamf's CloudOps team can then grab that to restore it within their system. So with this, there's actually some stuff you can start looking at today, some things to shrink your database and to make that migration period quicker. Because if you've got a massive database, it's going to take hours to do the restore, and you've got that blackout period where your old MDM's off and your new MDM's not ready yet. So let's look at some housekeeping. So first thing is, log into your Jamf Pro instance. Log into your Jamf Pro instance. That's it. There we go. And you go into the settings, and you can scroll down the bottom and look for your summary. And on here, scroll to the bottom, check table sizes, etc. there. And from that, when you get the summary, it will show you, first of all, the size of your database on this list here. 2.9 gig database, that's okay. The rule of thumb, as I've been advised, is around 5 gig. So if you can reduce your database down to 5 gig, it'll be a normal, quick migration. And then to find out maybe what's taking up all that space, you can scroll down as well, and you can see certain tables are going to be using more and more and more. So here, we've got a 2.9 gig database, and 466 meg are being taken up just by the mobile device commands table. So it's worth then checking through and making some changes and maybe reducing that as you go. So for example, something makes sense, the mobile device commands, you can go into your devices, you can go through, and you can look to clear out the pending or failed commands, etc., and that would reduce that table. If you manage your macOS devices, log flushing can really be beneficial as well. You might have some reason, I mean, we've all done this, we've all turned a thing on to be never, or flicked all the buttons or done something and then forgot about it. So it's good to review these, change them to a window that works, better for your org maybe. And there's even an option there, you could actually do some flushing just before the migration if you felt like that was prudent as well, and if you wanted to get the size reduced. Also, on the macOS side, again, you've got your inventory collection. There's many options here. You might have checked a box to check for something and forgot to uncheck it, really. So, things like collecting active services. That's only a snapshot when the recon was ran of what service is running on the device. That's probably not going to be something that you want to keep running. If you're looking for something in particular, you're probably better off doing it using an EA for that, and you can disable that setting. Again, it's the paths as well, where you're collecting items. So this is the default paths that Jamf will use to look for applications, so within /applications. But you might have added new paths. You might have asked to look in the users folders or other locations. Is that still needed? Decide yourselves if you need to do that. Again, maybe an EA will work better to look for certain things, but it's worth just double checking that. And then we have fonts as well. So be mindful of your fonts that you're collecting as well. I mean, it's just a massive way of bloating your database. So this probably isn't going to be worth it for yourselves. Again, EA, look for your particular font, smart group, etc., deploy it, or a profile, etc. Lastly, plugins. This really isn't going to be that applicable in this day and age, but it might well have been something you've left on, and you've now got a load of data sitting in there. So it might be something you look to remove, and hope to reduce your database size when you do that as well. So it's really just a way of having a refresher, keeping on top of things a little bit. And there's also a great knowledge base article from Jamf about this, where they talk about how long enabling those settings is going to, how long it's going to make your recons happen, recons be, and the size of the data as well. So as you can see on there, I think with the plugins enabled, was that 248 KB of traffic versus without that, it's 12 KB. So it's a huge difference. And if you're running Jamf Pro for a multinational organization, having large recons can have some issues where there could be timeouts or things like that if you've got a device on one side of the world trying to hit your Jamf Pro server. When it comes to mobile devices, you might have some in-house apps that you're storing in the Jamf Pro database. This is one of those, just because you can, doesn't mean you should. So this is something you could look to move away from. Again, there's a nice KB article talking about different options available to you, put them in a web server, etc. But also, you've got the options of deploying apps, BTB or whatever, within your AXM, your Apple School Manager, Apple Business Manager. So you've got those options available to you as well. And it might also be something that you've just, again, set and forgot about, or might find even ebooks, iBooks, that are just left in there as well. So it'd be good to review those, and hopefully the summary should show you that stuff as well. Lastly, and not leastly, there's the cloud services connection. So this enables us a few things, but the idea would be that you'd log in, you'd enable it with your Jamf ID, and the main thing we're looking at here is the icon service. So what this will do when it's enabled, and you start adding things, self-service policies, etc., it will look for the same icon that's within Jamf's cloud service, Jamf's icon service, and use that instead, meaning that that space isn't taken up by your database. This is something you can do now to start getting the benefits of it and start having the size reduced from your database. And it's a very easy one to do. So database is wrangled. It's now under 5 gig. What else can we do to make these things as smooth as possible? One of the things you're going to need to be mindful of is keeping top of Jamf Pro releases. You really want it to be a migration and not a migration and an update to make it the smoothest experience as possible. N-1 would generally be the rule that I would suggest, unless there's a particular step here that means that it could be problematic, and then you might want to go onto the current version instead. But keep this knowledge base to hand and review it as you go. And now we get the fun topics. So the other thing to talk about, and again, this is something you can do now, talk to your teams about data residency and networking. So you might have requirements like GDPR, state ramp, all those type of things that might require your data to be held in certain locations. Those conversations can take a while to go through. So it might be worth having them internally before you speak to Jamf. If Jamf Cloud is on your roadmap anyway, honestly, have these conversations as soon as, because it's going to make things much smoother for you. With that as well, you'd also then want to look at the networking. So you're going to need to start making changes so that access is available for the different regions. And you might want to also check things like your LDAP servers. They might want to change them to a Jamf Infrastructure Manager as an LDAP proxy. They might decide that's more secure. You can do that before you migrate, if you're using the custom DNS option, and then migrate, and that connection should still be there, networking allowing. So again, the reason I feel like I can talk about this I've been managing Jamf for a server for a while now. This was a talk I did. What did I put the date on here? 2014, thank you. So you can see different people there. Behind my elbows, Tom Larkin, if you know him. Jahan, he's up there. But you know, again, this is a thing that I've been doing for a while now. With the multinational organizations, where your Jamf Pro instance is sitting shouldn't be an issue as long as you look at your recon data and how much volume you're putting in there. But in general, I've mostly managed Jamf Pro servers in London, but devices in, whether Singapore, Hong Kong, Latin America have all been checking in fine. It's a small amount of data those check-ins are. So that choice should really be around your data residency and compliance requirements. And again, there's a KB here as well. Jamf, they're looking at all the different ports and different IPs you need to open for the access. So this would be something that, again, you'd have to go through with your networking team, security team about on this. Make sure that's in place before the migration, not afterwards, because that can make things quite painful. And then also, you're going to have to turn off your old rules as well if you were self-hosting and it was publicly accessible. So getting those things figured out early on is going to make this whole transition much smoother for yourself. So there's a few options. There's some readiness tasks. Talk about database maintenance, Jamf Pro upgrades, data residency, networking reviews. Well, what else? Well, when it comes to actually the day itself, custom DNS, that's going to be the simplest route and might be very little for you to do. I would suggest that you would have a couple of test devices, re-enroll them, take them through that process, because that ticks most of your boxes. That'll make sure that your profile's being delivered, applications being delivered via your policies or VPP. That will cover you on that as well. And if you look at standard itself, the standard, it's a whole new Jamf Pro URL. So that's going to be a whole new process, a long process to get those devices re-enrolled and to go through as well. But again, it'd still be worthwhile keeping that Jamf Pro, your prior Jamf Pro instance, on the version because that updates the database. So keep it on the N-1 from Jamf Cloud. And again, you've got to review your data residency and networking. When we come to fresh start, no database. So you're just looking at your data residency and networking, really, as those are questions you want to go through. So there's a few other things that we found here as well. We went the custom DNS route. If you migrate your multi-context instance, we would advise people that resave their pre-stages because that will actually update the URL in the pre-stage, which helps that enrollment process go through. We've also, the API integrations as well, they often don't follow the 307 redirects, so you might need to change them to use the Jamf Cloud URL. So you've gone like, some.example.com/macmil, you'll have to give them your macmil.jamfcloud.com type thing, that URL. But you'll know that pretty quickly, but just be prepared for those changes. And it might be worth asking those vendors if they need to. In some instances, we saw some Jamf Infrastructure Managers need to be re-enrolled, but again, that came back to those multi-context ones. So it's worth double checking there and kind of being armed and being ready for that. If you use standard, you're going to need to generate a new APNS, a new ADE token, or all those things, because it's a different URL. So whilst you've migrated the database, you're going to have to get rid of the old stuff and put the new stuff in. And obviously, if your Jamf Pro instance is online, you've got to you either grab a new VPP token, or you grab the existing VPP token and use it and turn off your old Jamf Pro. Again, go through, resave your pre-stages, etc., to update those URLs. And then when it comes to fresh start deploying devices. So is that it? Not quite. We've still got a couple more things left, so I'm still in front of you before your lunch. I'm sorry about that. But here's some more examples, with a shiny new Jamf Cloud instance, either completely new or running a copy of your Jamf Pro database, your next step is that, like I said, the enrolling of devices. Custom DNS, simple as. The other options are going to have more work steps for you to go through. But when you look at standard, where you've migrated your database up to Jamf Cloud, and it's now got a Jamf Cloud URL, or Fresh Start, if you're migrating from another Jamf Pro instance, or Jamf School, or Intune, or Workspace ONE, there are some options for you. So last year's JNUC, colleague Andrew Needham, and a fellow metalhead, presented in their talk the old switcheroo macOS MDM migrations, and they spoke about Jamf Migrate, which is a pro services engagement that can help you migrate your devices without having to wipe them. So it does the re-enrollment on the MDM side for you. Additionally, 24th of September, another one of my new colleagues, Matthew Phillips, I don't know what music I listened to, didn't ask, but I'm going to say Metalhead, why not? They had a webinar as well, where they're talking about the iOS side of Jamf Migrate. And as luck would have it, Matthew Phillips is presenting with his colleagues Card Randall and Jackson Pavelka tomorrow on using Jamf Migrate for iOS, but obviously if you've got questions about macOS, etc., they'll be good folks to go to, a good session to go to. So this is a bit of a recap. So there are three primary migration options that can be available to you. There's custom DNS, the standard, and Fresh Start. Custom DNS and standard involve uploading your Jamf Pro database to Jamf Cloud, and Fresh Start does not because it's a brand new instance. Custom DNS is only applicable if your Jamf Pro URL's TLD is a public one. That's a nice set of acronyms and stuff in there. We love them in IT, don't we? Standard and Fresh Start involve re-enrolling devices, whereas custom DNS does not. And if you're already a Jamf Pro customer, you could start your migration today. By that, I mean those database maintenance tasks, speaking with your team around data residency, maybe moving to a Jamf Infrastructure Manager ahead if you're going to be using custom DNS, those type of things. So there is stuff you can do right now. I mean, if all you do is enable icon service, you're going to be saving a fair bit of space when you look to migrate to cloud. So if we look at these three, custom DNS, if that's applicable to you, that's the simplest, quickest option, and should give you a nice migration because essentially it goes from your cloud, your on-prem, your whatever, to someone else's cloud. If it's a standard deployment, this is the one I'd with caution on this one. Again, unless the only use case I think would make sense for this is if you're education and you're reprovisioning your devices yearly, restore your database, new URL, enroll them all into the new system. But this is the more difficult the process really. And whilst Jamf Migrate can sometimes be used for this, it generally has a lot more sharp edges and is more problematic. And then you've got Fresh Start. Now, even if you had a Jamf Pro instance yourself, you've been managing it, it might be that it's been running for 10 years or so. I mean, there's multi-context customers of ours. When I joined dataJAR in 2016, James Risdale was running Jamf in the cloud before Jamf Cloud. So those instances are going to be 10 years old now, and they're still running. But it might be that you take the opportunity to just start anew and go through all that as well. So the Fresh Start option would be great for you then as well. So what do I recommend for next steps on here? So if you're new to Jamf and don't have an account manager, pop down to the Jamf stall in the expo hall downstairs. Likewise, if you'd like to discuss Jamf Migrate, you can go to sessions tomorrow, or you can pop down to the Jamf stand in the expo hall as well. It's never too early to discuss data residency and networking with your colleagues. They might be the thing that drags it out more. Of all the migrations we did, the timeline we had, the reason it took us 14 months to migrate near 200 instances was the networking part and the data residency part. Those conversations need to be had, but they just obviously slow the process down, speak to your own teams, what have you, and start having those as soon as possible. And, check the database size. Just run some maintenance tasks on there. Even if you're not going to move the database itself, you'll find that if you start slimming your database down, you're going to have a happier Jamf Pro instance. And from that, that's where you review your inventory collection enabled options, your log retention options, And if you do the summary and you're not sure what the tables are or how to remove stuff, reach out to Jamf support if you've got any concerns. They should be able to assist you with that and advise. Don't just jump into it and start messing about with MySQL. That could probably cause you more problems than not. Again, enable cloud services connection for the icon service. That will really start helping you immediately. Review your enabled integrations, note them down, speak to your team. Do you need to migrate to something else? So the main one on this would be your LDAP, is the main thing that we've seen. They might allow 636, well, so the dataJAR's cloud, we were accessing devices via one single IP address. So that natted IP, that people were happy to use that one IP to access their LDAP. The Jamf IP addresses are going to come from AWS, and there's a large set of addresses in there. Well, it's more than one at least. So your security team might not be keen on that, might decide they want something else, again, like Jamf Infrastructure Manager, which is proxying that connection for you as well. So this is it for real this time. We got left. I think lunch is just around the corner, or 10, 15 minutes away. But thank you, and there's a link to the slides as well, or the links. Thank you. Questions already? Just wait for Hector's come over, he's got the mic for you.
All right, so for us, we would be able to use that
Sorry, what's that
same
saying?
name.
Oh. Well, that's nice. Maybe, if you take a photo, you should be able to grab the link out the bottom, shouldn't you? And I'll look to reactivate that later on. Thanks. I'm sorry. Hello?
So for us, with that CNAME migration, for our internal DNS, we can just make changes like that. But for our external DNS, it takes sometimes 3 days, sometimes 3.5 weeks.
Wow.
Is that something that we would be able to, we would be doing ourselves with a database restore in the cloud, so we could do that when our vendor actually makes our DNS changes? Or is that something that has to be scheduled with Jamf to restore our database into the cloud? Because it'll be one of those where it's done when it's done. We can't control it.
Your Jamf Cloud instance will be up and running on the jamfcloud.com address prior to your database being uploaded anyway. So that could be a thing. So having the Jamf Cloud instance stood up shouldn't be an issue. It then becomes like that scheduling of that date of when you can make the DNS change and trying to arrange that with the pro services team or your account manager around getting that scheduled. The other thing might be your DNS vendor. They might be able to drop the TTL on the record. So you can go down to a 5 minutes TTL, so you make a change and it propagates within 5 minutes. That will propagate across their DNS servers, and then you've got to wait for the world to get the rest of it. But that might be a one-off case that they might be able to assist you with as well, so you can align all that together. So have that done in the morning when your Jamf Pro instance is offline and you remove the database to Jamf's Cloud Ops team. They're doing the restore, the DNS changes, and hopefully it all works out. But yeah, it's going to be a challenging one to schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Did the link work at the bottom now when you've taken a photo? Is that working? Or have I broken all of it? Cool, okay, I'll get it updated so when the slides go live and that, it'll be updated. Like I say, use the link at the bottom, take a picture on your phone, you should be able to grab the picture out for you, or the link out for you. Hello?
Yeah, you were talking about a Jamf Infrastructure Manager for LDAP. Is that just the kind of thing I can download, like the ADCS connector? Or where?
Yeah, it should be in the same place under your Jamf account. I know they've done a lot of movement lately, but it shouldn't be around that area as well.
It's like a free thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're quite cool. They actually enroll into your Jamf Pro instance, and so that connection between them is SSL secured, but it's with the device cert type thing. So that's why your security team seem to like them, because they've got that security. It's not just having the ports open. You've got an additional layer there.
Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you.
Our Jamf environment, we're migrating from a mature environment to the cloud, but we're migrating our data into an existing mature Jamf Cloud environment. Any
Right.
suggestions or any tips? Since there's global settings like cloud distribution and all that shared resources versus just having your own instance.
So you've got a self-hosted version of Jamf Pro, you've got a Jamf Cloud version of Jamf Pro, both have been running for a while, and you want to move over some items from your self-hosted into Jamf Cloud, is that right?
Correct.
Cool. Jamf Migrator, there's an app that's on GitHub. You can use that. You can pick certain items and choose to import them over. So you might be your EAs, and then your smart groups and your categories. It's really good. You just be mindful of the way that if you're adding items to Jamf Pro via the API, there's going to be an order. So you can't create a policy of a category till the category's there. You can't create a smart group with an EA till the EA's there. But it does take you through that. So I'd be looking at Jamf Migrator for that. I knew I'd say the wrong one. Jamf Migrate is the pro services migration thing. Jamf Migrator is the application that's available on GitHub. But that should allow you to cherry pick and move them across as you need as well. So that you should be able to end up hopefully getting the best of both worlds in that way.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got one more thing then over here. Now, there's a guy here, second row, poor Jeff. He helped us through most of our migrations at the beginning. So just to say thank you for that, Jeff, for all the time you spent with us and helping us get on the road with that. So thank you. It drove him so mad he left Jamf, but that's beside the point. Cool. Thank you, folks, and enjoy your lunch.